Welcome back to the Dylan Shea channel. If you have watched my channel before, you know that I usually do a game week roundup and reaction. However, this week, things have gotten out of hand at Tottenham, which is the team I support. I'm that pissed at the performances that this is what it has come to. I'm going to look at the reason why us Spurs fans and people who don't support Spurs can see that there's a problem, and why Spurs fans ain't happy with it at all, like myself. To start, let's just go over some of the stats for Spurs this season. Tottenham are in third position this season, 23 points out of 36, playing 12, winning 7, drawing 2, losing 3, with a 58 win percentage. Goals 21, which is the third best in the Premier League. Goals conceded 14, which is the 8th best in the Premier League. XG per game 1.54, which is 5th. XG against per game 1.16, which is again 5th. And shots on target against per game, so more of a defensive stat there, 8th, linking up with the goals conceded. Now, if you look at this on paper, it doesn't look all too bad for Tottenham. Tottenham would take being third. Every Spurs fan are not that entitled to say that they wouldn't take third. It's other things. And I've made a list of my problems with Spurs, and they are here. You can see them. And number one being too deep. You will hear me talk about this one the most, probably, in this video. But all of these, everything I talk about in this video is linked in these problems. They're all linked together. So too deep. We got reliant on Kane and Son. We got the midfield getting outran. We've got not as solid defensively. We've got Son's form. We've got injuries. We've got new signings and fatigue. And all of these link within each other. A lot in this video as well. I will be comparing Spurs the first 12 games of this season and the last 12 games of last season. I've got some general stats, statistics, head-to-heads basically of these things, as you can see in front of you on this. And if we look at the points are quite similar. There's only 3 in it, 26 to 23. Spurs just won one more game in the last 12 games of last season. Goals, this is where it starts to get a bit different. Goals, Spurs actually scored 6 more goals towards the end of last season than the first 12 games of this season. Goals conceded, you can see quite a big difference. 5 here, 9 to 14. Average possession, 49% to 53%. Now to me, this doesn't really mean that much. Possession. There's times where Spurs beat Leicester 3-0 last season with like 33% possession. Shots, you can see here actually, this season Spurs are actually getting more shots, but this is where it gets interesting because the shots on target is actually very close. You can see it's 5.5 to 5.6. This means that Spurs are getting better quality shots, you'd suggest. This is one of the big ones. This is where I said solid defensively is one of the problems. You can see here that Spurs are conceding 4 more shots on average per game this season. This is also a huge one in terms of chance creation for Spurs, 1.91 this season per game compared to 3 per game last season. Big chances, that is huge. Like I said, Spurs playing too deep has been the biggest problem this season. I'm going to go over this. First, I'm going to show you some of the play areas, where the play areas have evolved. You can see on the left is the 22-23 season, on the right is last season. What you can see is in the final third that there's not that much of a difference. What you can see is the ball's a lot more in Spurs' third now, which is not what you want. It disrupts chance creation, it makes you more deeper, there is more chance of conceding, and Tottenham are actually the team with the most errors leading to shots in the Premier League so far, and that's probably because of how deep they have been. So I want to show you, so on the left of this screen here is this season, again, on the right is last season. I chose 3 games in particular for this season where Spurs have used 3-4-3, including Kulusevski, Kane and Son as the front 3. I didn't want to be unfair and put Richarlison in there, so I could do a direct comparison. And what I've done on the right hand side is I have chose a 3-4-3 where Spurs played their best games last season, although this was the pattern for most of the games. It was very similar to what you're seeing on the right hand side of the screen here. As you can see, you can see the massive difference just by looking at it. If we look at the left hand side one this season, you can see how much deeper Spurs are this season. Look how much closer everybody is together. In the left one, this is very Mourinho days of Tottenham, where you had your defence and then you had your attack, and it's very, very secluded up front at the moment. Very isolated. Kulusevski is a player that has struggled a lot. You know, he's not a sort of player that's going to run through 5 or 6 players, and this is what he has to do to score a goal in this system right now because of how deep Spurs are. To me, there's no surprise that Tottenham have the least amount of successful pressures in the Premier League as it stands so far. When you look at this, think of how much distance the defence has to make up, push up the pitch, and everyone has to put in an extra effort. You know, what you're seeing is Tottenham being outnumbered going forward, and it's just not sustainable across a full season. If you look at a corner, you say zonal marking, right? That's what Spurs are really doing here. They're just watching teams pass around, which is making it very difficult to attack, because how are you supposed to then attack with a 3, as we can see here, versus 4 defenders or 5? It's just impossible. If you look at the right side here, you can see how perfect the shape is. You have your 3 at the back. You can see them nice and wide. You can see the fullbacks really high, pushing on. You can see the 2 midfielders really close together, always giving each other an option to pass the ball. Not also that Spurs are the team who have been dribbled past the most this season, and it's not a surprise when you see the distance, how far away those 2 midfielders are. And considering you only have 2 of them, it's very easy for that to happen. But who is Tottenham's main man? It's Harry Kane. Look how isolated he is this season. There's no option. Where is he supposed to pass the ball? He only has 2 options, really. He has 3. Pass it back to Bentancur, give it to Kulusevski, give it to Son. When you look at last season, he can play it back, he can play it forward, he can play it to Kulusevski, he can play it to Ben Davies because Ben Davies is supporting. He can play it out wide as well because he has support out there. The one on the right hand side, last season, Tottenham were playing a perfect 3-4-3 shape. Now what's annoying is you know how good this Spurs side can be. Spurs are actually first for percentage of shots on target. That means that you have quality players basically, which we know. So why aren't you getting the best out of them? Well, probably because they're on the halfway line the majority of the time this season. I've seen a lot of talk on the 3-5-2 formation not being a good choice for Tottenham. I disagree. Let's have a look at the one on the left hand side. This is Manchester United. This season, you know that one we got battered in, the one where we couldn't leave at a half? Yeah, you know that one where we were really deep? Look at the shape of that. What is that? What you have to consider as well in this Leicester one on the right hand side, which is a performance I picked out where we played a 3-5-2 and were very good, is there's no Romero, it's Tanganga. There's no Son, it's Lucas Moura up front with Harry Kane. Harry Winks is in midfield. So the one on the left is a much better side. There's really no excuse for Antonio Conte, in my opinion, for the performances to go down as much as this. Again, on the one on the right hand side versus Leicester, you can see how compact it is. You can see everyone's together. Always an option to pass the ball, pressing with each other, and a team, you know, and that's what this shows. You also have Harry Kane being supported by a fullback being very high in Emerson Royal. You have him and Lucas Moura being close together, but also having the option of Sergio Reguilon to the left wing back. You see Højbjerg supporting too, so you have plenty of options going forward. On the left hand side versus Manchester United, what on earth is this? Look how deep everybody is. Dyer, Romero, Davis, way too deep. No one from the midfield is supporting the strikers. Your only player supporting the strikers is Perisic, who hasn't been good enough this season. That's not a reliable player. You can go and, you know, have hopes that he's going to do something because he has been not good enough for Tottenham this season. I want to go on to fatigue now is another reason why I think Spurs are struggling this season. I noticed it in the first game versus Southampton. The players looked tired on the first game of the season. How can that happen? Now you do have to consider Spurs are the 4th oldest team in the Premier League. You could make the case that they're also a lot of them in their prime, so they shouldn't really be an excuse. But when you look at the distance that these players have to cover for each other, because they're so far away from each other, there's no surprise that they're fatigued. They have to do extra running because the system is flawed at the moment. Spurs have also used the least amount of players this season, 20, joint with Crystal Palace and Brighton. And when you consider they're in the Champions League, you have to rotate. And Antonio Conte isn't doing that right now. And that all comes from our signings as well, not being good enough to step into the Champions League games and being ready. Let's go on to the defence because, well, the defence has been nowhere near as good. There were times last season where we went deep. We didn't play amazing in all of the last 12 games of last season, but our defence, they were really solid and it was very difficult to break us down. However, this season, it's not the same. The players are not mentally as switched on. Like I said, I think fatigue plays into this and how deep Tottenham are. Being deep doesn't mean having the best defence. You can play high and have a very good defence. Tottenham have the most errors leading to a shot in the Premier League. I think I've said that already. But when you're that deep, where are you supposed to go? Where are your options? You can only play a long ball, or you can dwell on the ball, which is, something our players have done quite a lot this season. Individually, at the back as well, has not been good enough. Ben Davies has been consistently making mistakes all season. Eric Dyer has been complacent since he has gotten into the England squad, making mistakes again. I thought against Newcastle, he was terrible. Longley, he's not been good enough. There's been the odd game where he's had a good game, but you've seen against Newcastle, there's massive flaws there. Romero hasn't been the same since coming back from injury. I don't know whether he's, laying off because he wants to go to the World Cup, but you just cannot do that. Otherwise, you're letting your team down. Davinson Sanchez hasn't really been good enough to start for Tottenham for 4 years. There's a massive concentration problem with him. There's a mistake. He's not good enough with the ball at his feet. He played against Newcastle. And when you play that deep, like I've mentioned 1,000 times, where are you supposed to go? If you're that deep, there's going to be pressure on you. It's just leading to errors. And you can see why Tottenham have the most errors leading to a shot. Defensively as well, Tottenham have conceded 187 shots this season, which is the lowest in the Premier League. Goals are going to happen. That Thomas Partey one I think about at Arsenal. When you give someone that much time on the ball, when you allow 187 shots to be, piled at your goal, one will go in, and it happened in that game. Let's now go on to the signings that Spurs made. Now, this Spurs side is better than the one last season, but yet playing worse. When you look at the signings, Longley hasn't really fitted in. If you look at Jed Spence has been non-existent. Conte doesn't fancy him. I don't know why, because he has to be better than Emerson Royale. If he's not, then he's not going to have a very good career. Let's look at Basuma. He's looked okay. I thought against Brighton he was fantastic when he came on. However, Manchester United and Newcastle, 2 games that he has started, not good enough at all. I think those are the only 2 games he started as well. Let's look at Richarlison. He's not been bad. He's been okay. His general play and his performances have been good, I would say. Need more output from him, though, if you are going to contend for the bigger trophies, which Spurs want to. Now let's go on to Son's form. Now, I will admit, he has been better in recent games, but is still nowhere near the Son Heung-min of last season. He has 3 goals, 2 assists, but that to me isn't the problem. I think goals will come for Son, but it's the performances. His first touch hasn't always been his best attribute, but it's been really poor this year. There's been a lot of times where we've needed a final ball from him and he's let us down. There's been times now where he's backed out of 50-50s quite a lot. He's not looking the same player. He's not got physically worse. He's not suddenly become an old man. He's still very, very quick. But the performances haven't been good enough. And when you think of when I said everything links into each other, think if Spurs are very deep and we're relying on Kane and Son to go and attack, and Son is massively out of form, how do you expect to score? But he could also be fatigued. Tottenham have to start closing down more. They have to get further up the pitch if they expect to score more goals and ultimately get in a Champions League spot. With this sort of football, I don't think Tottenham can finish in the Champions League. I'd be surprised if they finished in the Europa League. There are some good things for Spurs, though. There are some positives. Kulusevski is back soon, and he is a massive player for Tottenham. Richarlison will also be back soon, which adds depth, and Lucas Moura, who is fitter now. We've seen Oliver Skipp getting his first start since January, which is a massive positive. Spurs fans know how good this man is. I also think Basuma will get better. We know he's a quality player. We've seen it at Brighton. He really is great. I do also think Romero will get better as the season goes on, but these are no guarantees. This is just me hoping. When it comes to Hugo Lloris, I've seen Gareth Crooks say that we need to get rid of him. He's been flawless for almost 3 years. There's been a mistake here or there, but keepers make mistakes. He's not the same error-prone keeper as he once was, despite recent form. It's just a little bit of a blip. I'm not going to call out my captain after a little bit of a blip. Also, 1 week ago, he's the reason we didn't lose 9-0 at Old Trafford. So I think I'll put in a little bit of faith. When it comes to Spurs fans, probably one of the most annoying fan bases on planet Earth, saying Conte should go, they want Conte sacked. Absolutely not. We will never get a manager as good as this in our lives. Stop being ungrateful. But the tactics are not good at the moment. I think they will improve. Let's not forget when we lost at Burnley and he started calling out all of our players. Did we think we would go on a massive run and finish in the Champions League. Probably not. Another reason I made this video is because I see Spurs fans on Twitter saying, we need this player, we need this player, we need that player. I just wanted to say in this video that for me it's more about the system than the player. We went on a massive run with Emerson Royale last season. We looked poor in games where Kulusevski has played this season. Now that Kulusevski's out, people think he's going to come back and we're going to start playing well again. That's not going to happen. We have to change. We have to push up the pitch, get higher, start being more intense. Otherwise, we're not going to get Champions League football this season. There we go. There's my little rant sort of thing over. If you have enjoyed the video, give it a like, or if you just agree with me, give it a like. Subscribe if you are new, and thank you for watching.